Hi, my name is Rod Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here, and I am super excited to have a chat with the gentleman that I'm interviewing today, and here's why. So you guys all know I spent 20 years following Tony Robbins around the planet, and I was on his team for 8 years, and I love mindset. And if you don't know that, you haven't listened to one of my episodes. And so the gentleman that we're interviewing today, well, what you may not know is that Tony Robbins got his start with a gentleman named Jim Rohn. And that's another gentleman I would recommend. He's no longer with us, that you listen to his material because it's fantastic. Well, the gentleman I'm interviewing today, Kyle Wilson, is the founder of Jim Rohn International. He's also the founder of YourSuccessStore.com, and his own website is KyleWilson.com. Now, he has worked with people like Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Darren Hardy, Dennis Waitley, Robin Sharma, all these huge names, people like Mark Victor Hansen, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Jack Canfield. He's done seminars, but, I'm super excited to talk to Kyle today because, again, you guys know I love this stuff, anything around mindset and psychology. So without further ado, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thank you so much, Rod. I'm honored.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a lot of fun. So, although this is not going to be a real estate conversation, guys, you do want to listen, though, because we're going to talk about how to build a list. And you guys know in this business, you must create reach because it's a team sport. You're going to want to get out there in front of sellers and brokers and investors. And so the topic of today's, one of the big topics, and who knows, we're going to go all over the place today, but one of them is building your list. And so let's go back, if you don't mind, and just talk for a little bit about how you got into the personal development space. Where it all started for you, Kyle.
No, thank you, Rod. I grew up in a small town, Vernon, Texas. I never went to college. I remember someone once saying, wow, Kyle, what'd you do to eventually become Jim Rohn's business partner? And it's like, well, to be candid, I did drugs. I wasn't the class president. I was on the other side of that equation. But at age 19, I had a significant emotional experience. I made a change. I started a first of a series of businesses. And at age 26, I said, I kind of done what I think I can do in the town I lived in, sold my business, sold my house, moved to Dallas. And Rod, just a series of serendipitous things led me to eventually, it's just too crazy of a story, but led me to eventually attending a seminar. And I went to this seminar, and the guy putting it on had a call to action. I just lost my job. And one of the few jobs I've ever had in my life. I've always been an entrepreneur. I'm not really employable. And he said, listen, we're hiring local sales reps. And I was the last guy. I mean, there was a room of like 30 people, and I was the last guy. Terrified to speak in front of 5 people. Had never really been in sales. I'd been an entrepreneur, but didn't know sales. But it's the story of I was the last man standing. 6 months later, I'm the only guy left out of everyone he tried to recruit to do seminars. And
this is Jim Rohn. This is Jim Rohn we're talking about here.
No, this is before Jim.
Oh, before Jim. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and
okay.
I was desperate. Jim and Tony both talk about desperation. We do things for one of two reasons: inspiration, desperation. I was desperate. I was a little bit in this bubble. I was inspired. And I ended up becoming his number one sales rep. And one day I got a call, and he was doing these all over the country. And he said, listen, my mentor, Jim Rohn, is coming back out of retirement, and we're going to start promoting him. And you're in Dallas. I'm going to Los Angeles. Texas is yours. And that was 1990. I started the seminar business 89. 1990, I was getting 200-300 people. I'd do 100 phone calls a day, cold calling to book yourself to go speak at companies, to then do a couple of meetings. You know the story. Mm-hmm. And then you sell tickets at the end. And Jim was so good, and I really learned to leverage referrals. And I started doing things that I wasn't initially taught to do. and being the number one guy. And I wasn't working for Jim. I was working for the guy who was promoting Jim. And I was the number one guy, but I wasn't making any money. And I said, okay, the system's broke. I'm going to have to go out on my own. And so my mantra was, how do I get 2,000 people in a room? And I just constantly, how do I get 2,000 people in the room? So I left that company, and my first big event was Og Mandino and Brian Tracy. I moved to Atlanta.
Haven't heard that name in a long time.
Mandino. Wow. Got 1,300 people, then went to Chicago, got 1,800, then went to DC, got 2,100. And by then I was hiring Jim from Jerry, because I said, Jim's the best. So I'm doing a combination of Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy or Og Mandino. And eventually that model totally broke. And Jim one day said, hey, Kyle, because I think I had 2,600 people in Sacramento. And he said, hey, Kyle, did you ever pay Jerry? And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, we sold 50,000 a product. And I was paying triple Jim's fee because that was the cost for me to have access to him. And he said, well, you know, he owes me 450,000. And so this next event, just pay me directly and I'll take it out of the cut, you know, that he owes me. So that next event, after the event, Jim and I got together, and he said that partnership with Jerry was, you know, they stopped. It had gotten worse since we last talked. And I said, well, if you guys are definitely done, I would love an opportunity to have exclusive rights to go market you. I think you're the best speaker in the world. I'm a pretty good promoter. And Rod, you go back to the Tony Robbins days, Jim would talk about that was adventures and achievement. And he said, we were filling up all these rooms, and after we lost 800,000, we finally shut it down. And so this was that second experience. So I knew he wasn't looking for a partner. So I said, look, give me exclusive rights. I will take you out to the marketplace, and I'll just pay you off the top. I'll pay for everything, the staff, the team, marketing, and I'll pay you off the top. We did a handshake. That handshake lasted for 10 years before we finally put it on one sheet of paper. But that first year, Rod, I was able to take Jim from 20 speaking dates at 4,000 to 110 dates at 10,000. I started creating products. This thing called The Wheel, which was very powerful, led to a bit of a God download where I created this viral marketing tool that we moved 6 million of. And, you know, the race was on. And what I found out pretty quickly was people loved Jim Rohn. And once I could get them on the wheel and take them around to buy his 1 day or his 2 day or his book or his audio, we didn't have anything left. And Jim wasn't ambitious to create a lot of products. Over a long period of time, I did create a lot, but that's when I started Your Success Story. And I said, listen, if I can book Jim for this company, then the next year bring Brian Tracy in or Les Brown in or Dennis Waitley in. And so I then became the agent for Dennis Waitley, multiple speakers, and I started creating products and doing events with these other speakers as well. And
by the way, guys, if you don't recognize these names, they're big luminaries in the self-actualization and self-development space. Every one of these names is huge. Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Darren Hardy used to own Success Magazine. I think Dennis Waitley, huge. Robin Sharma, huge. These are big, big names in that space. So please continue.
Well, I always say we learn by doing. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know what it was to cold call and, you know, go book yourself and become a promoter and fill up rooms. I sure didn't know what it was like to be an agent. And, you know, Brian Tracy taught me way back when, take something that works, but then innovate. And so I would always, and it's a thing on the wheel, and we can get into the wheel a little bit later, but that led to a series of questions about what's the most strategic thing I can do, the one thing I can do that's going to knock down all the dominoes. So can I stop you?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to stop you just for a moment because, guys, I don't know if you've noticed this, but Kyle asks himself profound questions. Like he mentioned a little bit earlier, and I just want to flag this because this is so critical, because your life is driven by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So he asked himself, how do I put 2,000 people in a room over and over again? And you just presented another question. I forgot the question, but I just want to flag the fact that I want my listeners to make note of that, because when you ask a better quality question, you get a better result. So anyway, forgive me. I just wanted to
No, that's great. And it's so true. I always say marketing, I do this thing called 7 principles to build your business and brand. And the number one thing is connecting the dots. Marketing's not about being clever or manipulative. It's how do I, in the most strategic way, connect my products and services with a prospect and a customer. And that gets down to a whole series of things like the competition, the marketplace, your products, but it also gets down to what's your secret sauce, what makes you special, what makes you unique. Also gets down to your goals. Like the worst thing you can do is go build something you don't really want to build if everything goes perfectly. And so I did really put myself through the ringer of trying to figure out what made Jim unique. And so I did coach Robin Sharma, I did coach Darren Hardy, Jim Rohn, and each one of those had a whole different strategy. If someone asks me a question, my typical answer is, it depends, right? So Kyle, how do you go become a speaker? Depends, right? And so there are these series of questions. So the wheel got down to this, Rod, how do you get people on the wheel and then take them around? And at the hub was Jim Rohn, and each spoke was a product or service. And the big question was, how do you get people on the wheel? That's number one, customer acquisition. Number two, I don't like to hunt. I want to fish. I want to figure out a way to get people to come to me. Now, I got to put something out that's authentically me. And so for Jim Rohn, I don't have one in front of me, but I created this little quote book because Jim was the most profound wordsmith I'd ever heard in my life. And I knew people loved him. So I thought, can I create something that this army of advocates will go out and give away? And I ended up doing them for Zig Ziglar and Mark Victor Hansen and Brian Tracy and Dennis Waitley. But with Jim's, I moved 6 million. The other, I moved 2 million because Jim profoundly was the wordsmith. And of course, it had my catalog. That turned out to be a multi-million-dollar little viral guerrilla marketing tool. But it was birthed out of some questions that led me to create something that didn't exist at the time. There was no list of Jim Rohn quotes. I had to go through his seminars, to pull these out. And I literally pulled out 1,000 quotes and got it down.
Yeah, he's known for his quotes for sure. What a brilliant idea. And so guys, let me give you some context again. Again, you're going to need to create reach, and to create reach, you have to, and so if you don't mind, let's drill down on this wheel a little more, because, again, those of you listening, going to start your multifamily business, you're going to need to acquire contacts for you to stay in front of, create a list, basically. And that's what we're talking about here via this wheel process that Kyle created. So the first thing, as he said, is acquiring the contacts. So maybe you can drill down a little bit more on the wheel, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Kyle. Okay.
Yeah. So again, the big question for me was, how do I get people on the wheel? And then how do I take them around the wheel? Sure. And one of the best ways to do it is create a product or service that's also customer acquisition. So when the internet came, Rod, I was one of the first guys to hit 1 million people. Now, I sold my companies in 2007, so I don't have that 1 million plus email list. But early on, I didn't try and sell. I try and get people on the wheel, get them on my email list through a variety of different things, and then build a relationship with them. The hardest group to sell to is a cold market. I want to sell to warm and hot. Like the things I do, pretty much 90% are referred by people already doing it, right? That's what I want. I want to fish, but I want the fish actually jumping in the boat. Right. So it kind of gets back to, there's a variety of aspects to this, but one is principle-based marketing. Principle-based marketing is relationship-driven. It starts with having a great product. Think of the people that go out with something that's not that great, and now they lose all the compounding effect. So you and I know and this is true for your podcast, it's true for everything you do, You put out great stuff, you're consistent with it, you're relational with it, and now it has a compounding effect. So it's got to begin with that when you look at what spoke. And then I'm just a big believer in having social proof. And so on my website, I load it with social proof because that's what makes me unique. It's back to the secret sauce. And we can come back to it, but I got 4 key things everyone should have on their website when you go to it. And then the next thing is build an audience. And then the next one after that's talk to the audience. But when we say build an audience, it really, again, gets back to what makes you unique. Some people post on Facebook every day. Some people are wired that way. Some people have never done Facebook. I don't advocate for doing, what anyone else does. You got to do what works for you. But the simplest way for someone that that says, hey, listen, I don't really want to, well, let me go back. So Jim Rohn, there's some early principles I learned from him. Can I share those real quick? Then we'll jump back into the wheel.
Yes, please.
They tie into this.
Sure.
And so this was when I first started promoting him. I learned through Jim that the major key to my better future was me, right? It wasn't anyone else. So everything begins with us. So if you're focused on the tactics, but you're not focused on yourself, growing your mind, right now there's a lot of noise out there, the government, the president, the economy, and ultimately
COVID, Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of stuff happening right now, for sure.
So a year from now, things are going to happen the way they happen. But you and I, the things that are going to have the greatest impact on us, we get to control. And that's our thoughts, our attitude, what we read, what we listen to, what we give ourselves to, our health, everything. And then he taught me that success is predictable. And that was powerful because he said, if you plant the seed, you're going to get the outcome. So it's like if you plant tomatoes over time, you're going to get that result. Well, that was powerful because I discovered something, Rod, that a lot of people that don't really go pay the price, they try and skip ahead. And these people, right? They're trying to go, and there's a lot of
they want to take a pill. They want to get rich quick, and there is no get rich quick.
And ultimately, that's being sold. It's being screamed. People selling the dream, and the key is if you really have faith. It's like Jim Rohn somehow broke into my belief system that if I do the right things, I will get the result. And if someone truly believes that there is a roadmap to success that people that have already achieved will teach you, that's powerful, right? So I bought into, okay, success is this series of things that if I do them, I will get the result. And then lastly, though, and this is where I'm going with this, is he said, if you want to be successful, learn to bring value to the marketplace. If you want to be wealthy, learn to bring value to valuable people. So that gets back to creating platforms. And that's one of the best ways to build an audience is to create a platform. You've done that with your podcast. How much do you charge for people to listen to the podcast? Nothing. It's free.
Nothing. Right.
But you've created a platform to bring on, you've mentioned you've had billionaires, you've had these amazing people. And that's a platform you've created. When someone does an event, they're hosting the party. And as you and I know, you sign, a 6-figure contract with the hotel that when things don't go well, you're responsible. And
dealing with that right now with having to eliminate live events. In fact, I actually have a call today with a hotel in Dallas. It's hilarious that you said that.
No, people don't understand the risk and everything that's involved when people that have platforms, but it also makes you valuable because guess what valuable people want? They want to find other valuable people. Like I just had Les Brown on one of my calls, and like we said, Darren Hardy, was first podcast he said yes to in 3 years. He says no to all podcasts, but it's because of the value I potentially bring. And so when we talk about building an audience, it's imperative you realize what your secret sauce is, what makes you special, and you begin with how do I bring value? And so And then it's just getting practical. I really make it simple. I've had guys say, I got a box of business cards. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, first of all, you have to have a methodology just to be able to put them on a list. I recommend Aweber, but whatever works, and just occasionally talk to them. And you don't have to pontificate. You don't have to be the expert. You just can bring value. I call it being the utility, sharing cool things, just whatever creates that conversation. Like right now, if someone's building an audience, just reminding people, if you have a business, you can pay your kids to do things. They can then put that in a Roth IRA and not pay tax on it, and then use that as an investment vehicle. That's just a reminder to tell your audience. So I'm always looking for things just to bring value. And then
Can I interrupt for 1 second? I apologize.
Sure.
It's very interesting because I literally just had a call this morning with one of my warriors, Ed. He wants to start building a brand and creating reach. And literally just had this conversation an hour before our conversation. And we went through all the different modality or vehicles, really, a podcast, a YouTube channel, a LinkedIn channel, a Facebook group, and he settled on a podcast. So I sent him a bunch of information that I do when people ask me about starting a podcast, and we had the same conversation. There's two keys here. One is consistency, which we haven't talked about, but the other one, well, maybe you did kind of allude to it, but the other one is add value. You've got to add value. And I told him, add value. Don't think about selling anything or demanding anything or asking for anything. Just add value. And one more point on that. When I first started this podcast, that was drilled into me as well by Tony. Actually, he said, the people that add the most value in the world are the most successful. And so I used to do free phone calls with my listeners. I say, call me. We'll set up a call, 30 minutes. We talk about anything. I'm not going to sell you anything. And I did hundreds of them. And just, focused on adding value, and it truly is a recipe for success. And I still do it. The same thing. I mean, just as much value as we possibly can. So I just want to hammer home the value comment before you moved on to something else. Thank you. And again, going back to the wheel, the number one thing is there's 4 criteria to creating a new spoke. Number one, is it part of your core business? A lot of people go do outliers. Well, now they're dividing their energy. Is it part of your core business? Is it strategic? Is it going to knock down the dominoes? And I'm going to tie that back into what you just said. Is it represent your secret sauce? Are you doing things that actually make you unique and stand out? I think I don't want to copy anyone else, because then I'm going to attract people that aren't really in alignment with me. The more authentic you can be about you, you'll attract all the right people. And is it focused on the right avatar, right? We can all go do a lot of things, but we want to focus on the right group. But here's my point. When I've talked to multifamily syndicators and investors, a lot of times they're spending a lot of time talking to potential investors. And I've always said, well, is there a way to flip that where people actually pay you to learn from you to then filter out who can be an investor? So that's a model I've created multiple times. Well, to get to there, you have to create a platform, whether it's an events or meetups. Meetup groups,
But it begins with bringing value. You start bringing value, so now you're fishing versus hunting. Instead of 20 hours a week talking to people, you figure out how to get groups of people by bringing value. And sometimes it's also bringing in outside people.
Sure. And that's a great way to start. You fake it till you make it. If you're you're the host, you bring in experts to either interview or to come to your meetup. In fact, just had this exact conversation. So it's kind of serendipity for me an hour ago. And I forgot meetup when, and I told him this. I mean, he's one of my students. He's new, so he's not an expert yet. And I said, don't worry about it. Bring in experts. And so
true. I'll do a post about Jim Rohn, my 18-year business partner. And people say, well, I can't do that. I wished I could. And I'm like, you actually can. You can do a post of a Jim Rohn book or a Jim Rohn quote and have a picture of Jim Rohn and say, Jim Rohn changed my life. When I first heard Jim Rohn, I was broke. After 6 years, now I have 200 apartment units. There's ways to tie in your story.
Social proof. Social proof as well.
Yeah, social proof 100%. And I call that hooks. If I'm just telling my story, who cares? But if I mention Phil Collin of Def Leppard, who's done masterminds at my house and I worked with, or if I mention Darren Hardy or Jim Rohn, afterwards people will come up and they'll say, I'm the biggest Def Leppard fan in the world, or I'm the biggest Darren Hardy fan. And so that's what I call social proof, is when you put out different things that might attract certain people, right? And then the key is always having a way to get people to give you permission to talk to them. I'll give you an example, and this goes way back to even, the 90s. I would not do an ad. Let's say I'm doing a big event and I'm advertising in the LA Times. I'm not going to tell you when, where, or how much. Back before the internet, you had to call me. And after the internet, you had to go to a link, because my ultimate goal was not to sell you a ticket. My ultimate goal was to get you on my list, because I had such confidence. If I bring value and just keep bringing value and build relationships, then I'm going to attract the right people. I don't go out and sell the dream. So I'm not worried about trying to get people that are going to be here today and gone tomorrow, try and get them before they disappear. I'm just trying to build a relationship that eventually I can attract the right person for my deal. And in investing, not everyone's ready to spend $50,000 or spend $100,000, but you are bringing value and you don't really worry about who gets on it. You just bring value, and at the right time, good things will happen.
Yeah,
and
no, agreed.
That's common for you, Rod. It's common for me. The majority of my people, I've had a relationship with a long time. But finally, the right thing happened. And this is part of talking to a list. You bring value, and occasionally you give them something to say yes to, right? Yeah. And that could be
let me give some examples, just because it's some concrete so they understand. Yeah. So for example, guys, I've got, of course, the podcast, and I'm consistent. I haven't missed a week in 3 years. And again, so remember, consistent in value. And then I've got a Facebook group with 34,000 members in it, and tons of value in there. I go live in there every week almost. And then a YouTube channel with, got watched for 30,000 hours last year. And because it's adding value. And so, this is a recipe that works, like a dream. And so, and there's nothing, and you can absolutely do the same thing. You just, pick your vehicle, as it were. Is that how you recommend people start, Kyle? Is to pick the vehicle of choice as it relates to, be it Facebook, be it LinkedIn, Meetup group, YouTube, whatever it is, and then add value. Yes. Yes.
I always say that everyone starts at zero. So at one time, Rod, you had 0 podcast subscribers, 0 list. So everyone starts at 0, and they say, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, 20 years ago, second best time is now. And so it really gets down to getting clear on what you want. And once it's like I said, success is predictable. Right. So you decide what you want, and then you're going to take a path. Don't try and do everything at once. I go with what, I feel led to do and what I feel connected to do. And I was talking to a couple that they're investors, syndicators, and, he's a spin off social media, and he wanted to do a call about marketing. And I'm like, listen, the best way right now to build a list is you got to be connected on social media. Now, I'm not saying you got to post every day. Just go get involved, post once a week. But now you're making yourself accessible for people to see you, that you went to high school with, or your neighbors. Right. So there's some simultaneous things you do, but go with what connects with you and
what you enjoy.
What you enjoy.
And what you enjoy. And that's what I told the guy this morning. I said, listen, I don't know if you enjoy writing, if you enjoy doing videos, if you think you could host interview people, if you think you could host a meetup. What do you think you'd actually enjoy? Because that's going to, when you enjoy it, it comes out. And that, I didn't know that I'd like the podcast. In fact, I didn't think I would, but I freaking love it. And so the passion and it comes out. And by the way, I've got massive rainstorm happening here. So if you guys heard the background noise, I apologize, like a gully washer. I'm just waiting for a leak to spring. But anyway, it's so important to pick a modality or a vehicle that you enjoy communicating in. And it's so interesting. I was listening to you talk about your background, and no college, same here, and don't like, not employable, don't like jobs. But I was also deathly afraid of speaking, and wouldn't even raise my hand in class. And guys, if that's you, don't worry. There are vehicles you can use. Maybe you do a podcast, you interview, so you're not pontificating, you're just asking questions. So anyway.
No, and Ron, I'm glad you said that, because I got to where I'm at by doing the cold calling, going to speak at events. But then I remember putting on a massive event, and I'm talking the 90s, and I'm trying to, run an event's not easy, right? And
no,
the hardest thing is, number one, selling tickets. So,
sure.
And then number two, you got to put it on. And I didn't have a very big team at the time. And then I remember just doing a horrific job of introducing Brian Tracy. And I decided, I'm going to quit trying to do everything. And then from that point on, I would put on huge events and film at Hollywood Film Cruise. And you don't see me anywhere on it because I had a host and I had someone else doing it. And I really made the decision I'm going to be the 100% behind the scenes guy, which made me a lot of money. But I got to tell you, I sold the companies. I came back out in 2014, and you and I both know there is no place for a middleman. There is no place for publishers and record labels. You are the product. And
right.
I can't tell you how slow I walked myself up to being comfortable to speaking in front of groups. I would hold a mastermind and we would all be around a table, and I never stood once. I was uncomfortable to stand.
This is recent as well, correct?
Yeah, the last 5 years. Because
yeah.
I did all the speaking, but then once I stopped, and again, I'm inherently shy and timid, and I prefer being behind the scenes. And when I came back out in 2014, that's why, I said Phil Collin of Def Leppard. I did these projects with everyone else. Todd Stoudemire, baseball player, and then I realized, whatever reason, the universe said, Kyle, it's your turn to come out. And everything I did with someone else, there was always a glitch. But then when I started doing my mastermind and putting my message out, that's when things worked. And it was interesting, but it was so uncomfortable. And I have such a long-term perspective on doing that. It's like I allow myself to be uncomfortable, but not terrified. It's like, okay, I am going to inch my way into this.
Well, see, okay, what you just said is so important. Okay, guys, that's how you do it. You inch your way into it. Because I promise you, a lot of my listeners are have some angst right now. They're, how am I going to build relationships so that I can take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming as a result of this crisis? Within 8 months to a year. And so how am I going to build that reach? And again, you do it a little bit at a time. I used to be horribly introverted, and now I've done live events with thousands of people, and so it's just you build that courage muscle a little, again, an inch at a time, and that's how you do it. And so it's interesting to hear that just as little as 5 years ago, you had to kind of reinvent yourself. And yeah.
Rod, if I had to get on a stage now, I'm still very nervous.
Right.
And it's uncomfortable for me. But let me address what you just said.
Okay.
Every time I speak, I always say, how many people have a hard time putting yourself out there? And, we're talking social media or whatever.
Sure.
Well, everyone does that I know of. There's a few that don't. But I sold my companies and I so diminished my story. I was almost embarrassed to go onto Facebook and say I was Jim Rohn's 18-year business partner. And I didn't dare say I created 300 intellectual properties, built a million+ lists, sold millions. But I didn't say any of that because I was afraid of being judged for being arrogant or offending the people I went to high school with. And I played that game. And then I realized, eventually they're going to get offended anyway. And then I would occasionally step out and do a post from my heart. And then people would say, I needed to hear that. And so I think we might know Tom, you might know Tom Burns, I don't know, or there's a guy in my group. Yeah. Colonel Tim Cole, 31-year Colonel of the Marines, a guy, Seth Mosley, 3-time Grammy winner. And I would watch these guys really diminish their story. And so my question is, and this is the defining question, is how much influence do you want to have? And that's all it gets down to. If you don't want to have any influence, just sit back and don't do anything. But if you truly have the desire to have influence, you're going to have to get uncomfortable. You're going to have to put yourself out there. And I'll be honest, you will offend people. Because
and you can't be afraid of diminishing. You can't be afraid, so it's so common for people, and I fell into this trap, as I still do some, where I depreciate myself, or I diminish and don't want to, put it out there, and I've got nice cars, for example, and I rarely, if ever, show a picture of me with the Bentley or anymore, or any of that, because so it's the same thing, and guys, what he's saying here is you have to get past that, because I had to get past the fact that I couldn't make everybody happy. And, we get these haters on social media that are trolls, that, keyboard warriors that say ugly things. And, that was really hard for me at first. And you've got to recognize that some people will not resonate with you. I do these sold out live events and 99% of the people rave about them. But there's that 1% that, didn't like the mindset component, didn't like the motivational piece, and that's always such a struggle. But that's the only way you're going to succeed in building a list and adding value to a list, is getting past all that and not self-depreciating, not not being afraid to. I mean, you've become a master of the social proof, Kyle. I mean, I can't even count all the names.
And I'll be honest, Rod, I diminish my story. I really do. I don't tell the degree. We could go, it's unbelievable, but it was over a long period of time. But I diminish that story. And I'll do a talk, and Brian Tracy talks about us making millions together. And I'll mention Brian, tell some stories, mention Jim. And people come up and say, so you've met Brian Tracy? Like, they don't even, or you knew Jim Rohn? But I want to go back to the social proof one more time, and just say that
maybe could you give some suggestions for people in the multifamily space want to connect with investors and utilize the strategy of social proof? Can you maybe, I don't know what if you could give some examples of what that might look like?
Sure. And I just want to say, what keeps us from sharing our story is actually our ego. There's part of us that says, oh, I don't want to go out and brag. No, you don't want to go out and get judged. If you really want to have influence, you're going to have to put yourself out there. And sometimes you're going to have to be verbose. Lady Gaga had to be verbose. Madonna had to be verbose. Not all the time, but sometimes if I don't tell my true story with Jim Rohn and Darren Hardy or Les Brown, whoever it is, you're not going to know. And then you're not going to knock on my door and say, hey, tell me more, right? And people diminish their story because they don't want to be judged. And so it really is letting go of the ego and being willing to, not worry about what other people think, because you want the outcome, right?
Interesting.
So, I talk about tactics versus principles, and tactics are technology driven. So anything related to technology is going to change the tactics. So that could be Facebook, it could be LinkedIn. LinkedIn seems to be the hot thing right now to really target and
investors.
That's
the demographic that's in there. And if you guys all know the term avatar, if you don't, an avatar is the type of customer you're going after. So if it's an investor, it's an accredited investor with a certain income range, and you identify as many you document as many identifiers of this avatar, this person. We even name the avatar, and that's the target that you're going after. In this case, it would be an investor. In my case, with my coaching students, I know it's an analytical person, typically 30 to 50 years old, and I know all the details of this of my most common client. So anyway, I just wanted to add a little, but please, I hope I didn't derail where you were going.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think I think it's going to be different with everyone, but there's some common principles. Number one, you just got to show up. I know the people that I didn't know who they were, that now I know who they are. And we have a relationship because they showed up at events. They showed up in private Facebook groups. They showed up with comments and liking my post. And that's how you start building a relationship. And then you mentioned social proof. So if you're at an event with Rod, go take a picture with them, post that. Don't be afraid to, but then give love. You know, if I post a picture with someone, I'm not sitting there saying, hey, look at me with whoever, right? Darren Hardy. I'm saying Darren Hardy's an amazing guy, you know, 20 something plus year friend. He did this, is, you know, go listen to his Darren Daily. So edify the person. And that's how you get over feeling like you are somehow taking advantage of that. Right. So again, social proof is important. It works. It's how we're wired as human beings. It's also connects the dots. If I'm a big Neil Young fan, or if I'm a big U2 fan and you mention them, I'm going to go, really? I just saw them in concert, right? Well, it's the same way. If you post a picture with Rod or do a Jim Rohn quote, you're now going to connect with the audience, and just be really clever at connecting the dots. It's the first principle is go connect the dots. So you have to, like you said, you got to take a step back and think about what's important. The other thing is, I don't think people should just go all in, you know, from 0 to 100. Consistency is so important. So just getting a rhythm that works for you. The other thing, Rod, is, and I don't know how you feel about it, but until you're really, really, really big, do all that stuff yourself.
Yeah, you can.
Social media is about being social. And so the worst thing that can happen is people go hire a firm to go, you know, give sterile stuff.
Pictures that are bought on, the photo websites, you know, that you can tell are professional pictures. And, you know, I remember doing my first videos, Kyle. Oh my God, I look back on them and I'm horrified how bad they were. But guys, don't worry about having a professional video. Do it on your freaking iPhone. Yeah. They're I mean, in fact, when we just had to pivot from my live event in Orlando, we had to, you know, do a live stream event, and I shot the video in my backyard with my iPhone because we literally had days to get the website up so we could pivot and innovate with this crisis that's happening. In fact, let me interrupt for 1 second and put a little plug in, guys. If you were not one of the 900 people that paid to watch me a few weeks ago, we've got another event coming up July 25th and 26th, 2-day event, drinking through a fire hose, everything about this business, finding deals, evaluating deals, finding all the money you need for your deals. I spend a lot of time on what we're talking about here with Kyle, you know, creating that brand and then building a list and picking a vehicle. I spend a lot of time on that there as well. Evaluating deals, doing the due diligence on deals, doing the financing for the deals, finding all the money you need for your deals, and on and on and on. It's drinking through a fire hose for 2 days, and it's $97 freaking dollars. So listen, if you haven't done it, July 25th and 26th, go to multifamilyvirtualbootcamp.com or text Rod Live to 41411, and I promise you would be glad you spent 2 days with me. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to put the plug in there and having a little bit of a segue for it.
I'm enjoying the virtual. I mean, in my world, we do a lot of events with my inner circle, and we just had to do a 2-day virtual. And I had a memory and marketing event I do with my longtime friend, 2-time memory champion. And we had a hotel in Philadelphia, and we kept trying to push it out and moved it from April to August. And then I'm like, who even knows the hotel's on furlough? So we moved it to a virtual event, and oh my goodness, it was just so much. Again, a lot more people got to attend.
Right.
They didn't have to get on an airplane. They didn't have to buy a hotel. We get to record it. They get to go back and watch it. We try to create interaction throughout. And
ours was a huge success too. I mean, huge success. I'm blown away by how successful it was. And I will tell you, it was hard though. It was hard for me because instead of hundreds of people giving me love and clapping and smiling and giving me energy, I have my stone-faced videographer. And luckily my daughter was there for a little bit of it, but with social distancing, I couldn't have more than a couple people there. But huge success. So yeah, I will tell you, thankfully, my whole company's been virtual for a couple of years now, so it wasn't a huge shift. I had to build a video studio here in one of the buildings in my compound, but other than that, but I think it's the new normal, buddy. Yeah. I don't know what you think, Kyle, but I think we're going to be doing a lot more of this.
Oh yeah, it's gonna take a while to go back because there's so much risk to put on an event. We're watching, like again, hotels give you a 10-day force majeure, but that.
Yeah, that's a clause in the contract, which I'm going to be talking about this afternoon with a hotel in Dallas is force majeure, where you can't do an event because of natural disasters like the pandemic.
But it's only 10 days. So if a 9/11 event happens, no one's flying out to Dallas for your event, and that's decided long before. And so right now, I was talking with someone yesterday that has an event in August. I'm like, go virtual. And they were like, well, we want to do both. And I'm like, well, and they're in Pennsylvania. And I'm like, well, I think it's visually more attractive to do it on Zoom than it is to try and film it with the film crew. And there are ways. I know we just really made it interactive. We had the gallery views, and I was looking at the gallery views on the monitor. So I did see the love, right?
Yeah. Oh, and, yeah. But I got some of that too. I did get some of that. But
I mean, who's going to put on a concert? Well, what concert promoter is going to say, I'm going to take all the risk and realize we're in a vulnerable place where
we're supposed to have 800 people in Dallas in August. Horrible time to be in Dallas, but just the way it worked out. But how do we get we can't, if there's social distancing, we can maybe get 200 and 250 people in a room for 800. So, it's just not going to work until this vaccine comes out or whatever. So, and
I don't even trust the hotels to. I mean, they're so vulnerable right now too. Everyone's furloughed, so it's the new normal for a while.
Yeah,
and it's just a lot of risk to try and put on an event.
Right. Talk about your 52 lessons and talk about that. And guys, I'm going to highly recommend you get this. It's a free thing that Kyle puts out, and it's on his website, kylewilson.com. Kyle with a KY, Wilson.com. But talk about the value there, because it sounds like an incredible value.
Well, can I share a couple?
Yeah,
a couple of lessons,
please.
Please. Yeah, being a seminar, I've been doing this for 30 years. So I have. Like Les Brown was just on my podcast, and one of my Les Brown stories is 1994, Gladys Knight, Billy Preston, and him, and us going out to dinner, and then us doing motivation and music events with Billy Preston. And it's the story of Les being a DJ, and it's one of my favorite Les Brown stories. Brian Tracy, I remember being at his house, 1990. I'm a young promoter, and he said, Kyle, I encourage you to pay the price for the next couple of years. He says, it's like getting a plane off the ground. A plane, you can go 80 miles an hour down the runway, burn tons of fuel, or you could be 300, 400 miles up in the jet stream, burning less fuel than 80 miles an hour on the runway. And he said, most people spend their whole life on the runway because they never pay the price to get the plane off the ground. It takes that extra effort. And I really took that to heart. Zig Ziglar saying, never do a good deal with a bad guy. Rod, I've never sued anyone. I've never been sued, which is hard to believe. I've been sued because of some of my people did something, right? And I wrote the check. But how do you do that? Well, part of it is you just look for red flags quick. Yeah. If someone's litigious, no thank you.
Well, you trust your gut too. Your brain is it can detect micro signals subconsciously that you don't detect consciously. And if something doesn't feel right, you guys have heard me talk about developing partnership and how I have a free resource of all the questions you should ask before you get into a partnership that I give out. In fact, let me go ahead and I'll give you the thing for it here, if I have it. I don't have it right here. Oh, here it is. If you're going to get into a partnership, it's got like 50 questions. Text partnership to 41411, and it's all the questions you should ask. But the first thing you've got to do is trust your gut. If it doesn't feel right, trust it, because I can tell you every time I haven't, I've regretted it. So I don't know if that ties into what you're saying here, Kyle.
It does. I think it's one of the most valuable lessons for this audience is don't do a good deal with the bad guy. You know,
Right.
Sometimes we're desperate to make a deal happen, but there's sharks out there whose whole goal is to take what's yours and make it theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So do the due diligence on the person, and that's huge. And it has saved me. And how do I know this? Because it cost me early on too, right?
Sure.
And you just kind of look for those common threads. You put little tests out and you try and see what someone's philosophy is. Are they a giver? Or are they a taker? Are they win-win, win-lose, all those type of things?
Right. I've got a mastermind myself, and as you know, that's an incredible environment. And I think with the one person we just added, we're over 10 billion in assets represented by that mastermind. But I've turned lots of people away because I look for that dynamic right there, because it's a place to give, not just get. And so if they're narcissistic and it's all about take, get, they're not the right fit for that group. So
yeah, it's really tricky. Like I always say, mine's not pricey, but it's exclusive because I'm looking for the right combo. And here's one of the things I look for, Rod. I'm also looking for the person that just doesn't come to give. Like we have some pretty big people that have big platforms, but they're taking notes. They're sitting there. They're not just coming to be the expert. There are some people massively successful that wouldn't be a good fit because they're not going to come to learn. They're going to come just to export.
Interesting.
And so that's always interesting too. But I'll share a couple of more lessons.
Please.
Like the short, the Cliff Note version.
Thank you.
Dennis Waitley, early on, we were talking, and he said, Kyle, I've written 18 number one best-selling books. And he said, but I'm a full-time speaker. I travel the world. So I've written them all over a period of 30 years at night. He said, during prime time TV for most people is prime time for building my business. And he basically summed it up as prime time's the right time to build your business. And I think that's true for all of us. You have your day job, you have your thing, you make a living, and then it's prime time when other people are watching TV that you got to go build that second thing. And there is a power, and I think, in keeping your day job for a lot of reasons.
Sure.
It's also part of your influence, right? Like if I'm talking to someone about, investments, it's like, who's your influence? Like there's a guy I know who, world class at what he did in the tech world. Well, he got out, he retired, he became a full-time investor. Now he's competing against everyone else trying to raise money. And I said, again, what's your secret sauce? What makes you valuable? Now he's back in the tech world doing consulting, making a lot of money, having a lot of fun traveling the world, but that's where his investors are coming from.
Yeah, and I'll add something else. I get this question all the time. Should I quit my job and do multifamily full time? And my answer is always no.
Exactly.
So not just because the reasons you just mentioned, which are very, very valid and important, but also if you don't have income, you could get caught up in fear, and we all know fear paralyzes. And if you're paralyzed, you're not going to take action on multifamily. So
no, income's the number one reason. Income's the number one reason.
Right.
To not do it. And there's 1,000 variables, but all things being even, if you're able to keep your day job and go build something, and again, it's back to, you can't make a vineyard in 2 months, no matter what course you take or who told you what. It's going to take 5 years. And I had a vineyard at one time, and it takes 5 years. And so if someone really, again, success is predictable, but they're not buying into the get rich quick, they're not going to be forced to go do a bad deal just to get the promotion money on the front end.
Right.
They're not going to be desperate to do deals they shouldn't do. Right.
Right.
It's going to help them do all the right things.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely accurate. And back to your prime time example, and I've got a sign on my wall right here. I can show you. It says, focus, grind now, play later. And that's really the bottom line is you've got to be willing to make short-term sacrifices and work like other people won't for a few years, to live like other people can't the rest of your life. And so, absolutely. One more. Give us one more.
Jim Rohn. I met Jim when he was 59. He died at age 79. And I can tell you confidently, the biggest impact he had was from 59 to 79. Zig Ziglar was in his 50s. There's a lot, if people are in their 40s or 50s and they think, oh, I'm behind. No, you're okay. Yeah. You're okay. It takes time. And his whole thing is the two biggest challenges to success are greed and basically impatience, right? And so when we're impatient or we're greedy, those are the two biggest things that will take us off track. So you just have to realize it's going to take time. Don't go for the fear of loss. Don't go for the get rich quick. Don't do a good deal with the bad guy. And anything great's going to take time. There's a few exceptions to everything. Don't pay attention to the few, there's outliers, occasionally someone hits the lottery, or the Hail Mary pass does work.
Yeah, but so guys, don't talk to me about the lottery and don't talk to me about that stuff. Come on. I mean, that's for fun, but as a strategy, come on.
And I'm saying in business, they're going for the lottery.
No, yeah, agreed. Yeah, that too, going for the quick hit, for the IPO that's going to make them overnight millionaires.
And here's what's cool. Right. There is a stair step to success that's guaranteed. Yeah. And I think this is just an observation. A lot of times when people have the wrong philosophy, or they are a bit of a taker, or they do have a win-lose, a lot of times, and you look at them, they're like, that's a good guy. Why the heck? And it's just this lack of faith in understanding if you sow a seed, you're going to get, a result. And I think Jim Rohn was so core about philosophy. What you sow is what you're going to get. So focus on what you want 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and go plant those seeds. And that's a guaranteed success versus all the people selling the dream. And here's what I take exception to, Rod. It's not the money people have paid to go buy the dream. It's the additional 100,000 it cost them by going down the wrong road. And I have seen that in my world.
By the mistakes they've made. Ask me how I know. I have T-shirts now that I hand out say, ask me how I know, because I've made every freaking mistake. So, Kyle, if you don't mind, let's get a little bit strategic for a moment and talk about some strategies for building a list. And I can give some of the examples that I've used, but I'd love to hear your take on actually getting people in the top of the funnel, as it were, for lack of a better way to describe it. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, let me begin with just the most practical, for people that have full-time jobs, they're not doing online marketing. Let me just begin at a very grassroots practical way. Okay. If I'm at an event and I meet someone, there's no way I'm not going to at some point in time say, would they like my 52 lessons? And how it typically works is they come up and they ask if I have a business card. Well, I don't. And I'm like, do you have a business card? And then when they give it to me, I ask if I can add them to my 52 lessons. It's free and no one ever says no. Now, if they don't have a business card on my phone, I just have them put in their name and email. Again, I mean, I'm on an airplane coming back on the red eye from Los Angeles 3 years ago. I'm sitting by a lady. We don't say a word. But at the very end, we start talking and she says, what do you do? And I ended up giving her one of the books that I do that has a lot of celebrity authority. So I had some big people in it. And she gave me her card and she just signed up recently for something. And again, it's the fishing. I just put good stuff out. So start collecting, if you have business cards, if you're at events, if you're, go where we talked about your avatar, go to events that have the avatar of people you want. Now go to investor events, right, and meet those people, but then go other places. So being out in the marketplace, meeting people, obviously if you're a guest on a podcast, obviously if you go speak, doing articles and blogs, but I still, I sold my companies. I had a 1 million+ list. When I started over, Rod, I had nothing because I sold my 1 million+ list, every intellectual property. I was number one on Google in probably 100 areas with different content. That was all gone. So I started at zero, and I realized the quickest, fastest way is social media. That's where you're going to reach the most people. Now, I didn't go overboard. I did it at my pace, at my style, but so much of my business has come from social media. So you got to get on social media, but then you can't just go broadcast. You have to connect, right? And then find the groups. And I would just say, really just take your time. Now, if you're more advanced and you're doing everything we just said, obviously a podcast or a YouTube channel, Facebook Lives are really powerful. And if you're at an event and you're talking to someone that has value to add to your audience, to say, hey, can we do a quick 60-second Facebook Live? But everything's just going to take time. There is no quick fix. Right. There are outliers of a quick fix, but usually here's one of the challenges. We see what someone else is doing and we're like, oh man, they're all over the place. They're doing all this stuff. It doesn't mean it's working necessarily, right? I've had that in my industry where people go create a product or scrap their plan to do someone else's plan, and I knew that plan destroyed their company. I could give you examples of horrible ideas that have been duplicated.
Yeah, and the other side of this is, don't think you've got to have 50,000 people either. No. You get a few hundred that you've really connected with. You've really got something, okay? And don't minimize that. Now, one of the things I do, I'll mention, is I create really incredible content, okay? And I'm showing you here. You guys can't see this on iTunes, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books that I've written that I give away for free, and they're not fluffy crap pieces. By the way, guys, you produce crap, you are crap. So you've got to put real educational. I heard that from somebody else. I stole that. But you've got to put real quality stuff out. If you do that, that's another way to get people into your list. Like Kyle's 52 lessons. That's exactly along the same lines. Once you take a look at that and get it, you'll be in his ecosystem.
And let me give you a secret on that, Rod. The secret was I figured out what would my potential avatar want. Well, my avatar are Jim Rohn fans, right? I'm the guy, right? I have the story no one else has. So I thought, okay, that's my avatar. Well, I'm going to create this, but not everyone's a Jim Rohn fan. Some are Darren Hardy and Dennis Whaley. Sure. But then I started, all I had to do was create a page, create an offer, and then I wrote one lesson a week for 52 weeks. Yeah. So you don't always have to go create it all. You can come up with an 8-week course or a 4-point thing, and all you have to do is create the front end offer, and then
and then you can do it as you go. As time goes on, you continue to add value. Absolutely.
And just be careful on Facebook and Instagram. You're not trying to buy likes, because there's a lot of challenges. That I would rather sell a product that to get them, to get the email up front, then try and go buy likes. Because Facebook, a great example is, and you know this, but we don't own our podcast list. We don't own our Facebook list. I remember Tom Ziegler, a good friend of mine, they had 5 million people on Zig, and he would get 150, 200,000 likes per post. I'm like, Tom, you got to get them off, not keep them on Facebook, but you got to get them on an email list. Told Robert and Russ the same thing with the real estate guys. Back in 2012, you got this great podcast, but you have to have a way to talk to them. And your email list is really the only thing that's yours. Or phone numbers, if you have them text for something, which is one thing we do. But I will tell you, like in our big Facebook group, and I didn't get this memo until we had 30,000 people. But now if they come on, we request their email address. Of course.
And it absolutely works. And so, that's how you create this list. And again, guys, you don't need 30,000. You get 300 or 400 or 500. I mean, there's a book I think about having 1,000 great contacts, and you can become a multimillionaire with 1,000 great contacts. I forgot the name of the book.
So Rod, let me play off that a little bit. Here's just a little technique, 2 little quick techniques. If you are on a podcast or if you're being interviewed, I have some people in my world that have been part of this book thing I'm doing where I interview everyone. and they send people to a website to get all this free stuff. And I'm like, well, maybe just tell people to send you an email, and then you'll send them the links to all the free stuff. Same thing, if you're a speaker, there's an athlete, Keith Elias, who would speak, and people would come up afterwards saying, that's amazing, I want to hire you to speak. Give me your card. He'd give him a card. He'd never hear from him. So you got to take control of the conversation by getting the email, and then you can follow up. So getting an email is more important than getting someone to your website that might or might not. Now on this, I'm not giving my email. That's not, I'm just saying if someone's in the beginning, right? That's one of the best ways, and then create that list.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've got to pick the vehicle that you like, that you think you'd enjoy being consistent in, figure out how to add value, build that list, and then you really have something valuable.
And here's the key. It all gets back to fundamentals and basics, like we said in the beginning. And a lot of people, they want to build branding. They want to build a story. But PR and branding at the end of the day without a list gets you very little. So it's all about building a list. So you have to be intentional about the wheel. They have to get on the wheel before you can take them around. And that really is an email. So think of Facebook, think of interviews, think of events, think of wherever you go, getting the email. So now you can have, and some people will get the email, but then they got to have a place to put it. So this is just the practical stuff. Go get Aweber and add them to, there's multiple
there's multiple CRMs you can use. We use HubSpot. I've used Infusionsoft. There's a Podio. There's, Zoho, Insightly, really simple systems. So lots of CRMs. Aweber is definitely a good one too. But
it's not a CRM. It's just the email list. But
it's a list provider. Okay, so it's how you send the emails. Sure. Okay. And then you've got to be consistent. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, Kyle, I really appreciate you being on the show today. You've added tremendous value. Guys, go to his website, kylewilson.com, and get his 52 lessons. We're definitely going to have you back on, because I think we could go for another 2 hours on this topic, which I freaking love. But thank you, and it's been such a pleasure to meet you, my friend.
Rod, thank you so much. So honored to be on your show, talking to your audience. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411.